Welcome back to the Canadian Gun Vault Behind the Vault Door. My name is Mark Morelli. I'll be your podcast host. And certainly it's been a very eventful 72 hours. We've seen some new developments. I know you guys have been waiting for a podcast from me. Sorry, I've been trying to keep up with the endless number of messages that I'm hearing from people, questions, the flurry of what's going on, what do we do? Should I sell this? I have heard so many different people, frightened people that are talking about the new legislation. We don't see this coming. I mean, they put together an advisory committee filled with anti-gunners. I'm sure they convinced everybody in the lobby groups that there wasn't going to be any big surprises. But lo and behold, right, they dropped this one on us. And they decide that they're going to limit debate and make a motion to vote. It's real easy to vote when you have a majority and you can pretty much smash through anything you want. They vote and make it very clear that they're going to rush this piece of legislation that was crafted by a bunch of people that either don't like guns or don't know anything about guns. And they're going to put it through in record time. My guess is that they'll probably talk for about 15 minutes before they'll say, that's enough, we're shutting down debate on this one, we're wasting our time. And they're going to push this piece of crap through. And it is going to give the RCMP, God bless them. I love the frontliners. I don't necessarily like the decisions made by some of the brass. I imagine that there's going to be massive movements of classifications. With the way that they're smashing this through, I think we can expect the absolute worst. And my best guess will be is they'll move as many as they can without overloading the system completely. They'll probably do it in phases. That's what they did last time. I've been telling people for quite some time, and I hate to spit all the doom and gloom, but it has been a really crappy week. For gun owners in this country, Canadians are now looking at, for our American listeners, we're looking at a couple of major flaws in a newly proposed legislation in the form of a bill. We have a majority government that can push things through kind of without much debate and or completely while ignoring the advice of people that may understand what they're talking about. In the face of all the poor decisions I've seen the Liberal government make, I highly doubt they're going to get this one right. They're doing a fantastic job of trying to convince people that they're doing this in the interest of public safety, but it would appear as though the Gangs and Guns Summit was a complete waste of time because, I mean, they really haven't done anything to address those issues that we can see clearly. Maybe it could be explained to us in a lengthy debate. But ultimately, the probably largest single problem I see is in the structure of this proposed legislation. There's a number of areas that kind of address what to do, when items are reclassified and, prohibited owners or the owners of prohibited devices are only eligible if they own that particular device on the date of. I mean, it's becoming very clear that they're preparing, at least to me, the space for what's going to be a prohibited firearm in this grouping, which will be defined, as such by the RCMP, who can just, if they decide that they just want it to be for whatever reason, from the sounds of things, they can make it so. And that's a little unsettling. For our American listeners, the RCMP and our federal law enforcement branch is now in the business of making legislation. And, we don't want that to be out there kind of thinking, without seemingly rhyme or reason in most instances, at least the last time this was done, there was the generation of a monstrous list that really didn't seem to have to be that big. And, if you ever look at it, the list of things we cannot own in this country is pretty lengthy. They've never really clearly defined the term variant, what can easily be made to go fully automatic, what's easily. I hear the litmus test is, like a toolbox. But I guess it would depend on, what kind of person you hand the toolbox and, how big's this toolbox? I mean, what's in it? You can make something go fully automatic. To kind of eliminate certain criteria potentially from what's acceptable and what's not, it really does allow our law enforcement, our federal branch of law enforcement, free reign. And historically, they really haven't treated people from the firearm community well in the past, or at least that's the optics of it all. We have some significant events like High River, where there was a flood and the RCMP, for whatever reason, decided to go in. At least that's my understanding. They decided to go in to people's homes to retrieve guns in many instances in lock safes, begging the question, like, what are they doing? They're literally breaking into people's houses to steal guns and seizing them, and to kind of understand the history of some abuses of power potentially on the part of RCMP decision makers. There isn't a lot of trust between the firearm community and the RCMP. And to suddenly put them completely, one grouping completely at the mercy of the other, would, cause some alarm in the community that was known to be bullied, if you want to call it that, or at least the perception of being bullied. If there's some greater purpose or reason to some of the decisions that we don't understand, I apologize, but, a lot of us just don't see it. After 20 years, the first batch didn't make much sense. This is looking like we're shaping up to enshrine in law that these guys are going to be able to make decisions that could be very long lasting. And, we want justification for being denied certain things. There's a lot of questions regarding, the size and content of the prohibition class now. That exists, and certainly with the Swiss Arms and the 858s, starting as a non-restricted item and then becoming a prohibited item, and then reverting back, of course, with the ruling from Mr. Blaney, the former Minister of Public Safety, saying there's really no good reason for these rifles to not be exempt, and so by name they were. And so that decision has been reversed now, and now the 858s and the Swiss Arms are once again prohibited items, or going to be prohibited items. The proposal is that, and they've even given a deadline date for registration, I've heard. I looked at the legislation. I stopped at the part where I saw them, sort of grooming the hedges around the yard, so to speak, for the room for the new prohibited class, and thought to myself, yeah, it looks like there's going to be a shift. And I think that's what most people can expect. You're going to see a number of firearms being pushed into a prohibited class or category. They're calling it the 12-9 class. They'll just keep adding more sections to the 12 class. I don't know what's so bad about the 12s. I kind of feel bad. But there's going to be a new 12-9 class. A lot of people are under the misconception that, I get a prohib license. Back in the day when they first invented, or if you want to call it the prohib license system or the classification system, where they did give people these prohib licenses, there wasn't a lot of knowledge circulating around at the time to kind of have people kind of understand that there was a differentiation between the classes. So if you owned, something that was in the 12-4 class and you wanted something from a 12-5 class, you couldn't have that because you didn't have the correct license for it, and it was a different category of firearm. Now, when I say that, I mean like you could own a MAC-10 or an Uzi, but you couldn't own an MP5 or, an FN. So, I don't know why they wouldn't just make, you're not allowed to have it class, and just stopped at, 12-4. But it made more sense to break these people into groups, which you could attack at will, because they were smaller. And, that was kind of the thinking, I'm sure, behind the process. I know that if I was trying to wreck something, that's probably the way I would go about doing it. I'd break you all up into little groups. And then that way, as I attacked each smaller group, if you instilled enough fear in each of the grouping that you didn't want to be that first guy that we picked on, you might try and lay low. And that's historically what the firearm community has done. certain categories or groupings of activities or types of firearms or the types of people that shoot the firearms rather, engaging in different activities and events, would just kind of let it happen to the other grouping. And, okay, well, at least it's not us, was kind of the prevalent attitude. Which is really sad. I don't think that that's the kind of thinking that has done us any kind of service over the years. So I've actively encouraged everybody to bring friends of all disciplines to the Canadian Gun Vault. To watch us on YouTube, to listen to us here in the podcasts. Really love the idea of bringing all these different groupings around. Finding unity amongst the lobby groups would be really nice. I really do wish they could get along. I haven't seen a lot of cooperative effort. I think that would probably better serve our unified purpose. And I mean, the whole point of having lobby groups is to come together. And so to have all these splintered groups doing their own different things. I mean, I have very limited understanding. I keep on telling people, I'm entertainment branch of, the firearm community, and we just happen to take a slightly more proactive role in terms of advocacy, than perhaps I had originally planned for the Canadian Gun Vault. I wanted to stay away from politics because I had some exposure to it for years. I certainly saw some sucker punches coming, and I've tried to describe to you guys that the SKS suddenly flying off the shelves, that may have had some grounding in reality. I mean, if the big plan is to shift a bunch of rifles over into this prohibited class, and I mean who knows what they're going to put in it? I think that it's quite possible that anything that suddenly got scared up like that was just a sign of what's to come. So I think people should prepare themselves for that. Back to the question of the 12.9, though. I've had a number of people say, well, does that give me the ability to own the other 12 classes? Like, woohoo, I have a prohib license. That means I can get an FN now. No, it's not like that. And I mean, people have been trying to sell them for ridiculous prices on some of the local websites and exchange forums for ridiculous amounts of money. I've heard of a lot of people that are scared and are wondering if they should sell them. And to that I say no. No. On your feet. I had one gentleman, he told me that his boy was very nervous about the prospect of having to give up his favorite rifle. And he asked me what, he thought I should do. It was flattering, actually. I've never been a parent. I was genuinely surprised and flattered when he asked, what should I do? And I said, be a good father. Teach your boy a valuable life lesson. Stand up like a man. Don't panic. Hold on. And that's the advice that I would give the firearm community. Don't let them see you scrambling. Being united is more powerful than ever. I asked our audience to call in to Ralph Goodale's office in response to the motion to limit debate on the subject of the newly proposed legislation. It's just been so sad to see the firearm community in the past falling apart. And now, we see in this moment that, we all have a purpose in this. I asked people to call in to Ralph Goodale's office and into the members of Parliament, and I couldn't believe some of the things I was hearing. The inability to actually reach a person, It required a lot of phone calls. I understand that their mailbox filled a number of times, and some people were, greeted with less than favorable sort of approach to receiving calls. I've heard horror stories of people mentioning the word C-71 and being hung up on. I don't know how much truth there is to it. I know that I spoke to the young lady when I called. And, she was friendly enough and lovely, I'm sure. But I decided that I was going to take a moment to talk to her. And this is where it's really important. Chances are if you've gotten a hold of a person, They've been tasked with taking calls and being the person on the line. I think there's a lot of merit in speaking to a person rather than leaving a message on an answering service. I left one a couple of days ago. I kind of saw the writing on the wall and knew something was coming down the pike. So, I had started asking the audience, you guys, to call in, and you were fantastic, to your members of parliament. The day before this all kind of dropped, with this movement to try and express to our members of parliament and to Ralph Goodale's office our dissatisfaction with the idea that they would limit debate on such an important subject that could have such an enormous impact on so many people. I'm actually appalled that there wouldn't be somebody that I could speak to directly about it. But I did manage to get this lovely young lady on the telephone, and I do believe her name was Robin. And, she and I kind of spoke for a moment, and throughout the course of conversation, it came out where I said, well, no, I believe the word confiscation came up, and she said, well, nobody's going to have their firearms confiscated. And there was something about the tone that kind of made me react the way I did, which was, well, you know what, like, I survived the mid-90s, young lady, and I'm telling you that's exactly what they did. They changed the classification of certain guns, and some people had their property seized without any kind of compensation. And, I didn't go off, but I said, I had to work a lot of hours, to pay for a $600 item when I was that young, and I was told turn it in or go to jail. And that didn't seem too fair to me. And it looks like the firearm community is seeing some of the signs of the same sort of activities occurring. You may get a few calls on this. And then after that, I heard a number of people got through, were directed to other places. I was telling people, she tried it with me. She said, well, write an email. That creates a paper trail. And I'm like, well, no, I'd like to talk to somebody about it. That's what I'd like. Rather than, sending an email that you could send an automated response to. And that's what happens, folks. You send in an email, there's somebody that has to click through about 8 billion emails. They look up at the top and they see the header C-71, and they're already sending an automated message. That says, yeah, this is what we're doing, and here you go. The Honorable Ralph Goodale is, glad to take care of the little people, and we'll keep you safe. Don't worry about it. It's fast and dirty and easy for them to just, click, 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 click. They're not reading it. When you get somebody on the phone, though, it's different. They hear a voice, they hear tone. They can tell when you're not happy. Some things are left to the imagination in, writing. I always advise people to be very composed. Be composed, be calm. You can be passionate, but, don't say anything stupid. Please, folks, when you call in to anyone, I would suggest that you never threaten them. And that hasn't happened, and it's not going to happen. Because, this audience has been nothing but delightfully respectful. And, we've proven that we can communicate ideas well. And so I expect that everybody that calls in conduct themselves in a manner befitting of Canada's finest, right, the firearm community. But I love that you guys called in. I have the impression that it was not a really good day for the people answering the phones, and a lot of messages were left. I love the idea of the phones continuously ringing in those offices. It's been questioned, what's the merit in doing that? I can tell you right now, there is merit in doing it. Getting somebody on the phone is always good. Having that phone ringing in that office nonstop is always good. It's definitely going to be good, when it comes to letting them know there's this many of us, we are organized, we will be active, we get involved, and we most certainly will tell everybody we know how we were treated, right? That nobody listened. Right? And when you get somebody on the phone, you talk to them for a few minutes, guess what? That person has been tasked with taking calls. It's not just about guns. So that means that everybody else has maybe got to wait. And I say this one's kind of important. It involves freedom, Canadian freedom. A lot of people went to war to die for it, defend it. I come back to Remembrance Day, lest we forget. You see those hashtags, right? A lot of good people gave their lives, made sacrifices. so that we could enjoy the freedoms we do today. Let's not be in a big rush to let them slip through our fingers. So we stay calm, we stay composed, we express ourselves, we take the time out of our schedule to call. It's for something that's important. It's beyond guns, folks. I always tell people it's about more than the guns. It's about personal freedom and having it taken away. By the way, for the good people that listen to us down in the U.S., I feel for you too. I can see these protest marches, looking kind of bad. They're painting the NRA as, a demon. I've never known that to be the case. Certainly there's some extreme ideas. Some people have absolutely no room for compromise. I think that there's a lot of room for compromise. And to make perhaps this podcast about something more than, the doom and gloom, why don't we look forward? We'll look forward to better days with a better government. It's coming. I tell everybody you know, folks, vote conservative. Vote conservative, don't divide the vote, pick one. Girl or guy, I don't care, right? Pick a strong leader. We got to win the metropolitan strongholds. We got to tell everybody we know that there are so many problems with this government, and it is way, way, way more important than guns. Things that need to be stopped. It's important that we talk about these subjects, in a controlled way, and enlighten people. I always invite you to bring friends to the page to give them an education on firearms. I don't want it always to be a dim image, a bleak future for the future of firearms. We're definitely in for some rough days, but I'm dreaming of bigger things down the road. A conservative government in power with the majority. And the things that we could change, improve upon. Andrew Scheer was criticized for the idea of a body that would oversee, fairness to all involved parties, in the interest of public safety and, someone that would advocate for the firearm community or understand their needs at the very least. He was criticized for that. And I can tell you that the subject of firearms is a touchy one for any politician. We have to present as a cohesive large group in order to get the attention of any political leaders. So it probably is in our best interest for our main lobby group leaders to get together for a little summit. I think it's really important that we do that. People are calling for it. They want to see it. It's the kind of thing that during rough times like these would really bring us together in more ways than one. I definitely think that the lobby group leaders should reach out to one another to sit down and discuss, future strategies. Other than laying down, of course, and maybe get some fresh, interesting ideas thrown into the mix. There's got to be a little more that we can be doing. Is something that I'll just keep saying to myself in this fight, and that's what it is. It's a fight. It may be one that we're designed to lose. Quite frankly, the way that they're pushing things through now and not paying any attention to what anybody thinks or cares, and in the face of all logic, they're pretty much doing whatever they want. I think we can expect a pretty big push. I would expect that everybody would think rationally before they make any final decisions about how they perhaps want to respond to the event. When you call, stay composed. I keep coming back to that. But it's definitely been, something of a dream of mine to imagine a world where, we could roll back the laws, where they could be a little different. There would be a little give and take, There's been moments when I thought to myself, you know what, I would have no problems registering certain guns. Like the VZ 58 rifle. I don't have a problem with that being part of a registered category of firearms. And I mean, Brian and I have talked about this, and I know that he shares some of the same feelings. But I mean, I wouldn't have any problems with registering certain guns, modern guns. but still allowing them the freedom. So the ability to still, shoot these items on private property, the ability to, buy and sell them with this non-restricted sort of category of licensing, a registered class of firearms, which I think is actually really, really great. It still allows all the freedom, and yet we know where the items are. So I kind of get where somebody might be coming from with that angle. And I'm sure there's going to be somebody out there who goes, he's going soft. No, be practical. Now, make no mistake, folks. I don't trust the government for 1 second. To stick to a promise that they would not touch it. We would definitely want to enshrine our property rights. In the Constitution, or the Charter rather, and to make sure that we wouldn't have to suffer through unnecessary seizure, or restriction of freedom. It would definitely be there that you could enjoy your property happily, the same way you would any other piece of property. And I think we'd be a lot better off. But of course, people are resistant to budging an inch. We may not have any choice this time around. They're pushing things through, folks. They've got a majority government. If we were even to slow them down, I would be quite content with the way they're acting. If you're outraged by that, if you think that it's wrong that they're not subjecting this wonderful piece of legislation, and debating it properly so all sides of the debate are heard, and so all constructive argument could be presented, so intelligent thought could be put into this, whether it be expert information. They don't want any of that. They don't want any of that because you know what? None of it would make sense. The general public would look at it and they would say, you got to be kidding me. We're going to spend our tax dollars on that? Hold it. It's the long gun registry all over again. Didn't we give up on that $1 billion fiasco? You promised you wouldn't bring that back. Okay, well, this is not, the long gun registry. Ralph Goodale can get up there and he can say it again and again and again. It's a registry. It's a registry. One that I'm not even opposed to. I'm not even opposed to the idea of a registry if I trusted you weren't going to come and change things or take things. So, give us some assurances. But they won't do that, folks. They don't need to. Why? Right? They won't. I'm not thinking anybody should imagine we're going to get much sympathy from this government. So they're trying to present this image that everybody's happy. No, everybody's not happy, Ralph. I can tell you that I'm that person that if there's only one unhappy person, all right, in all this, it's going to be me. All right. I cannot believe for 1 second that we are unable, right, to stop this. And we really got to look to our lobby group leaders. They're up on Parliament Hill. Hopefully they're working diligently. I've seen a lot of activity, certainly from Tracy Wilson and Rod Giltaka have been flying around the circuit. They've been busting their asses. And Rod has done a unbelievable job delivering the message in his usual calm, composed way. Really got to hand it to the CCFR in some respects. They've done a brilliant job of presenting well for the firearm community. And, moving right along, I'm hoping that we can move forward, and communicate strategies with one another. I'd love for Rod to give me a call when he has a bit of time. I don't get too many telephone calls from BC, so I'll recognize the number when it comes through, hopefully. If it should pass that, they just start to reclassify firearms, it's going to be unfortunate. I would encourage everybody to comply with the law. You're never going to hear from me that we should be, burying stuff in your backyard or anything of that nonsense. If it comes right down to it, all right, you're officially always going to hear from me that compliance is a must. We are law-abiding. But we're going to go down swinging. If people think that there's no merit in doing what we're doing, we're bringing people's attention to this message. If you know anybody in the media, bring to their attention that we are about to suffer through another bout of mistreatment as Canadian citizens. And quite frankly, we're fucking tired of it. But if anybody knows anybody in the media that would like to speak to us, we'd love to share some of what we believe is going on. If you'd rather do it yourselves, folks, please, by all means. I could use a break. I love answering questions, but even I'm going a little bit cross-eyed looking at all this, and I'm quite frankly, thinking that we are really needing now more than ever to come together as a cohesive, unified group. So once again, I'd love to speak to the lobby group leaders. If they could give me a call, I'm pretty easy to find. Definitely just shoot me a message or an email at the Canadian Gun Vault Inc. at gmail.com. Love to hear from you and perhaps get together, break some bread, and sip a little bit of coffee and discuss perhaps the future of where we're going from here. Anyway, I'm sure the anti-gunners have clued in by now, and some of the people listening to this, probably don't care for guns too much. We love you too, is the message I would send to you guys. And thanks for listening. And certainly, if the Canadian people are willing to continue to fight for their rights, we're going to never stop doing that. So take away what you want, all right? It won't matter, right? We will still continue to fight for what we believe everybody in Canada deserves, which is fair treatment. Anyway, that's about all the time I have tonight for this evening's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, Canada, shoot straight, stay safe.